So we should be going live. I never actually know with YouTube or any of these technologies until it literally says go live. So it looks like we're going live. I love it. Okay, welcome everybody. Those who are tuned into my YouTube channel, of course, this is Dr. Keith McNally. This is Conversations with Mitch Gray because each week I'm here in conversation with Mitch Gray. He's the other guy on the call. Mitch, it's always good to see you. How are you doing?
Yeah, doing all right. How are you, Keith?
I'm doing pretty good. So it's always good to
Good.
start my week off with you. And it's always good to dive into conversations because, like I said, from the early start of our friendship way back a couple of years ago, 2021 or something like that, when COVID was still a thing, even though we still use the term, um, if I had the opportunity to record every conversation that we ever had, I would probably be a much better off person because you just offer so much insight, wisdom, and
Mm.
understanding to life. And I love the term that you used last week. And so, of course, I did record it, and it was a live conversation. The monkest of monks. I've never heard. I don't know if you remember using that, but use the
Yeah, I do.
monkest of
The
monks.
monkest of monks. Yes. The
And
greatest among us. Yes.
So I don't know if that actually I don't know if that's actually a dictionary word, the monkest of monks, but
No, I
we
made
can
it
go,
up like
we can go
usual.
for it. But I ended the conversation by saying we need to revisit an idea, or at least kind of a flow of thoughts. And you always say you're a facilitator of thought. Um, Stepping into neutrality. Meaning that if we could kind of view life's experiences, they could be good
Mm.
experiences, but sometimes they could be really bad experiences. And if we could kind of view these experiences more from a neutrality, a neutral perspective, that would probably help us out a lot in life because a lot of us have anxiety, fear, and frustration of the future.
Yeah.
And you and I both fit into that
Yeah.
category.
Yeah.
Really easy because life can be challenging, tough. It
Mhm.
offers us, sometimes it throws some curveballs at us if you're a baseball fanatic. But if we could kind of step into the idea that it's going to be neutral, it could have a good ending, it could have a bad ending, but the experience itself is just flat out neutral. How do we step into a world where we can fully appreciate that life experiences are neutral and then recalibrate, and there's my word for today,
Yeah.
recalibrate our thinking, our mindset to kind of walk in that so that we don't have to live in fear, frustration, excuse me, and I'm joking, and anxiety of the future. Step into that
Yeah.
while I drink some water.
First of all, get a drink. Get a drink. Um, I don't want to discount emotions. And what I mean by that is there are times in life that decisions are made. Either we make the decision or someone else makes the decision for us, and it hurts. And I think we get confused because I've had people kind of point this out. It's like, how can you look at things as neutral when some things just flat out hurt? That's kind of the trick, right? The trick is the result of something is why we judge it as good or bad. So a decision was made, it hurt me. So I view that decision as a bad decision. But in 3 years' time, I may look back and go, that was the best decision that could have ever been made for me. And so that's where we're playing with the game of neutrality is feel the emotion of the hurt or the joy, either one. Feel the emotion of that, allow that to be what it is, but you can do that and still look upon the moment with non-judgment. And it takes a lot of practice. So I'm going to use two words here, two new words today. Number one, we are conditioned, we are taught to view things as good or bad. So this begins when we're children and our parents or whoever raised us says, don't do that, that's bad. Don't turn your bowl of cereal upside down because it's going to spill everywhere and that's bad and we're going to get in trouble for it. Maybe we just wanted to know what would happen when we turned the bowl of cereal upside down. As a child, in our innocent mind, we don't view things as good or bad. So, what that tells us is that is the true nature of our being is creativity and exploration, not judgment. We're taught to have judgment. That's not our nature. That is not our spiritual divinity. There is no judgment in the spirit. There is no judgment in our nature. And by judgment, I mean viewing things as good or bad.
Mhm.
But we're conditioned to view things as good or bad. Don't pour your cereal out. That's bad. And we may get a slap on the hand and get physically abused because of it. So now we're conditioned. And what that does, here's your other word, that domesticates us to a certain behavior. But our true nature is to not be domesticated. We are the only species in the kingdom of life that gets self domesticated. No other animal species or breeding species self domesticates. The reason we self domesticate is because we're taught that certain things are good and certain things are bad. But we're much better off to look at the 2 year old and just think about 2 year olds. What do we call them? The terrible twos, right? Because, but really, all we're doing at 2 years old is exploring. We're
Mm.
testing the limits and the boundaries. We're trying to live our best life. And I would argue we all live our best life when we're 1, 2, 3, 4 years old because we're not yet domesticated and we haven't yet been truly conditioned. And all of those belief systems, they stay with us through adulthood. So then guys like you and I are sitting here one day going, hold on a second, something's not right here. Let's talk about how we recalibrate this. And so we're conditioned and domesticated to believe that things are good and bad. But we only judge those based on either belief or results. So let's say something tragic happens, an accident happens, and someone passes away.
Mhm.
That is a really terrible thing. So the accident was bad. But actually, the accident itself isn't bad. It's the result of the accident that makes us feel these emotions, and it becomes a terrible, terrible thing. And so those are two extreme examples of the child and the accident. We all live life in the middle for the most part. But the problem that we're facing is we are conditioned and domesticated to believe certain things. And then as we grow in our awareness and could I say enlightenment, we actually begin questioning those boundaries again, which is what we're doing today. So then the question becomes, how do we recalibrate? And that's kind of an interesting thing to explore.
So how do we want to explore that? And because so many things happen in life and relationships, winning a job, losing a job, having to move if you are, in the military personnel, move a lot. And so there's always a lot of transitioning and all those kind of things. Lots and lots of variables in
Mhm.
life. We can't get away from that. And the more we become involved in life, the more relationships we build, the larger our network. Some people depend on us, and if we fail them, we may think, well, I'm just now a bad person. I've failed whomever, I failed my team, I failed my
Yeah.
employer. So there's way too many variables out there that we put ourselves. So we put ourselves in a situation where I have to perform, I have to do good,
Mhm.
I have to be good, I have to do good. And if I don't, the only other word I could
Yeah.
use is the opposite of that. It's bad. It was, I totally screwed this up. And we can both list off things as long as our both of our arms of all of the experiences that we had in life to say, oh my goodness, from every, parenting mistake that I've made or relationship mistake I've made or the times that I've, been fired or all that kind of stuff or lost a job. But when I go back and I do what you're, inferring, I go back and I look, and especially since 2021, and so this is going to be the most critical incident here where I did lose a job and
Mhm.
I did it, had suicidal ideations. I did attempt to take my life. Nobody was going to tell me at that point that at this point in my life, employed for 2 years,
Mhm.
restructuring my entire life, my
Mhm.
belief systems about what life is and how to live it is completely different than it was way back then. We're now going on a 3+ year, friendship relationship. Way back in the day, I said, Mitch,
Yeah.
at some point, I would like to be able to do something professionally, collaboratively with you. Here we are. I've said that to a couple of people, and I'm actually doing that with them as well. My life is different, but I've learned through practice, through listening and absorbing the things that you have said to rethink how I think.
Yeah.
So how do we recalibrate? How does that process actually work? Are there steps? Because for me, there were no clear steps. And I know
Right.
you're always going
Right.
to tell me there are no real clear steps. It's a
Yeah.
natural progression of life.
It is, but there are a few things we can remain aware of. Number one, all of the circumstances that you were so pointedly explaining, losing jobs, potentially having shifts with life partners, being responsible for your kids, et cetera, et cetera. If you go back to the idea of conditioning, we're conditioned to believe that we need those things. We're conditioned to believe that those things have to be present or we are failing.
Mm.
And so, yes, we need to make money because money pays the bills. But at the same time, really the only reason we strive to make money is because other people tell us we should. That's really the only reason. If we were to live in our natural state, we wouldn't make money. The world wouldn't need money because the perfect economy is people helping people and people helping others do the best they can and supporting each other. It's tribal, it's communal. That is the best that humanity can function. So we could easily remove money from the economy and still be just fine if we learned to depend on each other. That's how humanity should work. So the only reason we get up and go to work for the most part is because we're told we need to make money because the electric company tells us we need to pay the electric bill. But to live a human life, we don't need electricity. We just don't. The earth has water. We can find water. Like when you think about it, it's like all this stuff that we're talking about is stuff that we've made up that we don't need in our natural state. Okay. But we're here, Mitch. That's where we are. You're right. So then we have to go to the idea of expectation. Am I living under the expectation of others? And am I living under the expectation of self? The greatest source of misery is expectation. I expect things to work out a certain way. They don't. Now I'm suffering. Now I view it as a bad situation, all because I had expectation. So let's take a job. I expect to have a job. Then I show up one day and I don't have a job. Why am I suffering? Because I no longer have a job because I had an expectation I would have a job. Can I go out and find another job? Yes, I can. Will it take some time? Potentially, but I can still go find work. And you and I both have had to do that. And so we suffer because we have expectation, because we're conditioned to believe that life should work a certain way. The problem with it, as you said, is life doesn't usually work the way we think it should. Now, we can have deliberate intention, and deliberate intention is about life design. I get to co create with the universe to have a life that I really enjoy. But this is based more on life that I enjoy, not life of expectation of others who taught me the expectation of self. Again, our word domesticated. This is what this all goes back to. And so when you talk about how do you begin recalibrating, I would say one clear step is do the best you can to release expectation. Have as few expectations as possible. Now you can make plans, et cetera, but don't attach a plan because it becomes an expectation when you attach to it. It has to be this way. It can be no other way. That now becomes an expectation, and that's setting yourself up for misery. And then the other thing I would suggest is really begin considering how was I conditioned as a child to believe the things I believe today? And most of those conditions you don't need in your life. Now, maybe they're serving you well. And if they are serving you well, great, keep them. But I would challenge that most of the things we're conditioned to aren't serving us well because we're our own people. We're not our parents or our grandparents or our siblings or whoever raised us. We are our own people. And so dig deep into those conditions that you were taught when you were domesticated and really begin trying to eradicate those and explore those and see if they're for you or if they're not for you. So test the conditioning, try and release some of those expectations, and don't attach to the plan. Have a plan if you want it, but just know it's probably going to change.
Probably is an understatement. And I just want to add one
Right.
more I want to add one more point to this conversation because I wanted to hit it home. And then for next week, we're going to again continue to build on this idea because I think there's so much here. And because I want to now move into the co-creative experiences that we should really be looking into to create a world that's we want to live.
Yeah.
You, at some point in your past, were a Christian pastor. You pastored a church, maybe
Mhm.
one or two churches.
Multiple. Yeah.
You felt from, and there's a point to my to this kind of preface. You felt from a young as a young child
Yes.
that that was kind of your mission in life was to
Yep.
help people in that way.
Yep.
I say all that to say I grew up Roman Catholic. I converted to Christianity, and for what all that is worth, those umbrellas of thought clearly define expectations of how to
Mm-hmm.
live, what to do in certain circumstances, how to pray, how to do all kinds of different things.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't do them, guess what you're going to do? You're burning out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, that's clearly an expectation. It's
Right.
clearly a narrative that people are given. Some people assume it, consume it, and live by it. Both of us have disregarded those
Mm-hmm.
ideas and
Mm-hmm.
expectations, not putting any religion down, not
Right.
not, some people need that structure. Some people need those clear boundaries.
Sure.
My question here is, or how I want to approach this last part of the conversation is how how can changing your perspective on religious doctrine really expand your ability to do what we're talking about today?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that's break down the idea of expectation so that you are not encumbered by it and
Yeah.
can live freely as a co-creative entity in our universe. Or
Right.
even more layman's terms, live without fear of the future.
Yeah. 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 It's interesting. And really the response is it's about attachment. If you become attached to any belief system so deeply that you A, feel like you have to defend it, or B, feel like you have to sell people on it. In other words, talk people into believing it. Or C, begin looking down on others who believe differently than you. If you have attached that deeply to any belief system, it doesn't matter if it's a sports team or a religion or what type of ice cream you like, it doesn't matter. If you believe so deeply and have attached so deeply to your belief system that you have to defend it, talk people into it, or you look down on others who think differently, then you've gone way too far. And you've attached so deeply in that belief system that it has now become your conditioning, and you're now pushing that conditioning onto other people. And that is a major mistake. The mistake becomes when you're trying to sell people to your idea because it is the idea vanilla ice cream is the best ice cream and you can't talk me out of it and I won't even try another ice cream and you're wrong if you don't like this ice cream. And you hear people talk like this all the time about a variety of things:
Sports teams
politics,
most, yeah.
religion, sports teams. I mean, we could go on. And so what's happened is when you attach so deeply that you're now causing the wound of another person or looking down on them, then something needs to change. That is when that belief system is no longer serving the best interest of you or the people around you. And so that's how you can measure it. Is my belief system serving the better good of myself and the people around me? Let me use my grandparents for an example. They were very deep Christians, conservative Christians at that. I mean, the conservative of the conservative. I never heard them speak through judgment of other people. I never heard them talk down about other people. I'm sure they did. They were human, but I never heard it. What I saw and heard them do is I saw them serve other people, no matter what belief system, race, creed, ethnicity, whatever, didn't matter. My grandparents took people to the hospital, took people food, went and maintenance their cars, built houses for people. They served people because they believed that the Jesus way was to serve other people, not to preach to them, not to look down upon them, not to judge them, but to serve them. So I would argue the same belief system that I left because it caused me harm and damage, my grandparents were better off because of it. So you can have a similar belief system, but because we're different people, that belief system didn't serve me well. It caused me a lot of damage, emotional trauma. But for my grandparents, it served them very well. But I would also argue that because it served my grandparents well, it actually gave me the permission to move on to something different. And so sometimes, and I've had friends who have told me, Mitch, it's really bad that you left the Christian faith. And I'm like, but it wasn't serving me well. Why would I not leave it if it's not serving me? And the legacy that my grandparents left and they passed down through the other generations gave me the courage and permission to say that's not serving me the way it should. And so it's really interesting when we talk about belief systems, especially when it comes to religion and politics. But if you're so attached to it that it's not doing yourself honor and you're not honoring other people, then it's really time to question.
And that's kind of where I want to end this conversation. I want those who are watching and listening to really think about those words and really consider carefully their own belief systems about anything. So religion, politics, sports, whatever
Ice
is
cream, ice cream.
ice cream,
Yeah.
whatever that situation is where you have to preach it or you're putting somebody else down because of it,
Yeah.
I would ask you to reconsider it. So
Yeah.
with that, Mitch, thank you for another conversation, and I'll see you next week.